Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of Random Encounters, the show I do where I take random encounter tables, like the kind you find in tabletop role-playing games, such as Dungeons & Dragons, and I use them to generate an improv prompt, or a prompt, like you would in an improv show. I take a who that I don't know exactly what it's going to be, and a what that I don't know exactly what it's going to be, and I mash them together, and I draw a cartoon of that. All for your entertainment and my fun. And that's the whole point of this. That drawing's fun. And I encourage you to have some of that fun with me. Grab your own paper and pencil, or sketch pad and pen, or canvas and paint, or electronic drawing implement like I will be using my iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil and the app Procreate, none of which sponsor this. This is a completely unsponsored video, but people ask what tools I use, so I tell. That's what I use. But you use whatever you like. I also, for my own purposes, very often just use a ballpoint pen and notebook paper or printer paper. A whole lot of the stuff that I've done over the years that has appeared in print and been well received and nominated for awards occasionally was done on printer paper with some version of a ballpoint or roller pen that you get out of an office supply store. So you don't need fancy art equipment. You don't need to worry about it. What you need is something you're comfortable with and that you can just relax and draw. Draw, let your imagination soar, and let your fingers fail to capture what's in your brain. And I'll tell you, it's not just you. That happens to me all the time too. What I picture is not what I can put down on the paper. It's a challenge. It's a stretch. But you put down something on paper and it's fun. Oh, it's fun. But enough about that. I've now rambled on twice as long as I usually do. Let me grab my here aforementioned electronic drawing equipment and open up some files so that I can show to you the encounter tables we're going to use this week. This is what's on tap, and of course, pardon me. Of course, I'm always open for you to type in the chat, and if I can read it, I'm just not saying anything about your typing. It's saying about the technology. Sometimes, very often, if you are in Facebook, or if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, what you type will come up, and I will be able to read it here in the platform I'm using. This is not 100% the case. Sometimes what you type just doesn't come through. And I apologize if I seem to be ignoring you. It's because I'm not seeing your post. But I just saw one here from Christine C.T. Bina. Hola, my friend. Hola. Thank you for joining me. All right, let's dive in here. Let's do some improv cartooning, shall we? So we're going to roll the dice, as I always do, once or twice a third. Well, come on. Once or twice a third time. 4. 4 is our first 2. And once or twice a third time, 4 is also our first what? So we'll come back to the channel here. Come back to the encounter tables, and that is a zombie tea party. And I'm not thinking political tea party. I'm thinking a tea party. So zombie tea party is what we're going to be drawing here. I'm going to go to sketch, turn off the table, do my sketching in blue, because I like to do it that way. Alright, so we're going to have a zombie tea party. So what are we going to need? We're going to need, zoom in a little, we're going to need a table with a teapot on it. Probably a plate of muffins and such. And we're going to need a couple of, that's a little low, couple of zombies sitting at the table. One on either side, because they're having a tea party. I think one of them is going to be wearing a very nice big hat with flowers and such on it. Maybe a dress here. The other one can have, what other kind of hat could we have? I'm trying to think of a nice, maybe just a hat with a veil on it. And something just a little, not off the, maybe off the shoulders? Yeah, off the shoulders. And then what I'm going to have the face of the zombies just kind of roughed out there. Okay, that's looking alright. So I'm going to take that. I sketched it small so I can blow it up a bit and move it here to the center of the image. And we're going to have a zombie tea party. It's not a fez. No, it's not a fez. It's not a fez. I can see where that might look a little bit like a fez. Maybe it needs to be more of a pillbox like that. Owen, hello, Owen. It should be American zombies throwing tea of British merchant ship overboard. Well, you know, if I did that as a for the 4th of July episode, that'd be a good idea. It'd probably be a good idea here, but I think it's stretching the joke more than I want to right now, which doesn't make me right. It just means it's my show. Alright, so now we're going to go to the lines layer, and I'm going to take these, and we're going to making sure that I have my pen set at the size I want it to be. I always say start with a line you're confident in. You want to be putting down things that are not going to change, particularly at the start of the drawing. So that if you make a mistake, when you make a mistake, I'll say it. We all do make mistakes. I make a mistake just about every drawing I ever do. But you want to have stuff that's there be, you want the first stuff you put down to be reliable, because whenever you have to change anything, whenever you find up having made a mistake and you have to change anything on a drawing, you've got to change the other things that are connected to it. So you want to start with things that are probably not going to change. Because if I had to take out something that was one of the first lines I drew, it is possible I'd have to take out everything, because everything is connected and built off that. We've got a zombie here. I gave her a ruffly necked dress. go. It's looking pretty good, I think. Tell you what's not looking quite so good. What I like to do with zombies is to give their eyes, really make an effort to make their eyes clearly not looking in the same direction and be of odd sizes. And I had made the one in the back, the one in the front, a very thin, small pupil, and the one in the back bigger, but that really didn't stand out. So I'm switching it. And now we'll go to our other zombie. Give the first zombie an underbite, so I'll give this one an overbite. And here we go. Again, we'll have a little pillbox hat and a veil. Something, fancy that you'd wear to a fun little tea party. And of course, we're going to have to get this table in here. Now, I could just fudge this. If I was doing this on typing paper, as I was talking about before, I would not have drawn the whole table in there, that whole arc of the top of the table, because clearly some of it's going to have to get erased. But and that's difficult to do when you're working on in pen on typing paper. But particularly for doodle purposes, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to erase all your lines. That's one of the reasons why when in here, why I do the sketching, what you see here is as blue pencils. If I was working with a ballpoint pen on regular paper, that would not be a different color or a pencil that I would want to erase. It would be just a very light line with the ballpoint pen, which then, when I drew over it with a darker line, would just sit under back as kind of a scritchy background. But that's okay. Again, I wouldn't do that for a finished piece. I would do something where I could more easily erase it. But again, what we're doing here is mostly for fun. And that's where you should all be starting. Not worrying about a perfect finish. Have fun with the drawing. Alright. So let's erase some of that out. It's super easy when you're working digitally. It's difficult when you're working in physical media, and it's super easy when you're working digitally to just remove anything that's not working the way you need it to. And we're going to have a plate here with a muffin on it. Okay, cool. So I was thinking while I was doing this that maybe the muffins could be topped with little brains. And that's... I'm not going to worry about getting the details of that right when I draw it. I'll make it pink, and that will sell the brains idea. Or not. I mean, maybe it won't. That's what I'm going to try anyway. Somehow I've got to just shape that a little better. If I want the brain's idea to go, I'm going to have to just get that shape a little more. There we go. A little more brain-like. Erase there. Do the same thing here. Little brain muffin. Look at that. This is coming together pretty quickly and pretty well, I think. Okay, what do I want to do right now? Well, I want to grab both my sketch and my lines and move them just a little closer to the center. There we go. And come back to the lines layer. Let's turn on. Oh, that's not good. Sometimes you add something super quickly, and that's often a mistake, right? Take the time to pay attention to what you're doing. Add it on super quickly, and it's much easier for it to go wrong. Okay. It's a good sign if I make myself giggle. How about some horror derbs? Oh, Mark. That's a good pun. I think that, that maybe what one might be saying to the other when they were serving. That is a really good bad pun. Okay, I'm going to turn off the sketch layer now and see what we've got. Where I might want to add a little bit here or there just to clear things up a bit. Or erase here or there. Just want to take that line out. I don't know if you saw what I was doing, but it's because you can't see. If I had an overhead view and you could see where my hand and pen were moving, that would certainly add to the perspective. But it also, my hand and pen would get in the way. I like this version where you're looking at what's happening on the screen, but because you don't get to see a cursor for where my pen is moving around, it's sometimes difficult for you, I know, to maybe see where I'm working, particularly when all I'm doing is adding in a couple of little dots or lines here and there. Okay. Good. Now let's go to the colors layer. I mean, I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about it for a reason I'll bring up later. I've gotten very used to doing these things where I'm doing them in color because I can, because it's very quick. But it also, this could be done. This would have been a 10-minute sketch and we're done. I could move on. I could do more drawings per hour of showtime if I didn't add the color in. As just a fact. But I don't know. I think the color is part of what's fun, and it certainly gives me some fun things to talk about in a tips for you folks who want to do drawings yourselves. There's more for me to talk about if I do the coloring too. And that's something that people often have problems with. But I have been thinking about maybe doing less of that, removing the color part of the show. And the reason that I've been thinking about that, I spelled the word room. I did spell the room. Look at that. Inadvertent. Scribbled came out room. I'll have to actually go fix that. I mean, that's a good thing to point out. Among the lessons, I often will say that you want to, you don't have to get things right. You just can't get things wrong. And one of the corollaries to that is you can't have things that you don't intend to be there pop up and distract your viewer. That really looked like the word room, and if someone was looking at it, they would say, why does it say room? What's he doing? What does he mean? And I don't want that. So I'm taking that out. I'm taking the time to go back and remove it. All right, let's see. I need to come back to the green. Go for a darker green for the hair. Oh, did I switch the glowing brush back again? Yes, I did. Okay. Suppose I could give different colored hair to different zombies, but I've gotten in the habit recently. I was doing a project recently that had a lot of zombie drawings in it, and I gave all the zombies pale green skin and dark green hair. Okay, let's see. I want a nice yellow for the hat. Something nice and springtimey. Darker version of that for the underside of the brim. And maybe a light floral green for the dress. Anyway, yeah, I was watching some videos of events that were done at San Diego Comic-Con. Scott Shaw and Mark Evanier and Sergio Aragonés had a seminar they would do just about every year for quite a while, which was similar to this in that it was just called Quick Draw, I think was the name of the event, and they would take Mark Evanier is a writer, so he would be the host, and he would go to the audience and get suggestions for things that the artists on stage would draw, and then they'd talk to the audience and draw the things. Very good. It's one of the influences for this show. I'm getting pulled off into a side discussion that I don't want to have right now. Anyway, I did notice that they were in their hour or hour and a half or 2 hours of the show would do a lot more individual drawings than I do in an hour here. And I was thinking about that. And one of the reasons is that they don't do color. It's just line drawings. And so I have a chance to take this show to a, I think I talked about this last week. I'm talking to the folks from Gen Con TV about maybe switching over and doing this show on their channel live. And it seems likely to have more short-term viewers. I don't know. I'm just thinking that it might be good to try and do more drawings and maybe a little less drawing tips. Fewer drawing tips, excuse me. Want to get that grammatically correct. And an easy way for me to do that would be to not do the coloring. The coloring doubles at least the time, sometimes even more. Coloring very often takes a lot more time than the drawing. Alright, so I'm going to switch back to my inking pen and my lines layer, and I'm going to add a little stand down here in the corner, and we have Zombie Tea Party. Ba-da-ba-ba-doo-boop. Zombie Tea Party. Yeah, so I'm thinking about that. I'm just thinking about whether it's, I don't know, how much benefit is doing the colors, or how much is that different than what other people do. Right? It's kind of the things you have to think about when you're putting on a show like this. You want to be entertaining. You want to be different than other things that are out there, but you also want to hit your goals. I'm looking at those. Wow, that just looks like pink frosting. It doesn't look like brains. It's kind of tiny. On the muffins I'm looking at. I was hoping that they would look like brain muffins, but in fact they just look like they've got pink icing. Oh well. Yeah. So first of all, the random encounter aspect of it is a different thing for this show as opposed to other ones like it. The D&D theme ish, and it's not super strong, but that's it is something that comes a lot into what we're doing. That's a difference. The fact that I do them in color, that's a difference. But how many of those are? How do I outweigh that with the benefit of doing more drawings, having the ability to do more drawings in a 1 hour or 90-minute show? And I don't have answers to that. I'm just saying these are things I think about. I'm going to look here at the chat while I take a little sip of my drink. Gen Con TV do a lot throughout the year. Yes, yeah. In fact, Gen Con TV has regular programming all year long. They've got a lot of live play shows. They've got some gaming news shows and other entertainment shows. And they've got a full schedule, particularly in the evening hours. So a lot of it is specifically game-related and live play shows, but not all of it. And I was talking with Peter Atkinson, who is the owner of Gen Con LLC, and the previous owner, the original owner of Wizards of the Coast. And he is running the Gen Con TV segment of Gen Con at the moment. That's the part where he is most deeply personally involved. And he was telling me, back up. I was talking to him, I was interviewing him for my other show, which is on Wednesday nights, 50 Years in the Dungeon. And in fact, we were taping a show. That show's going to go live next Wednesday. So if you want to hear this conversation, tune in next Wednesday, and you can. He was saying that they've got their evening slots filled, but they're trying to do as much as possible. They want to have a lot of programs, and they have people on a lot of the shows stream live with them. To answer your question, Michael, on Twitch, they do it on Twitch, and then the shows will stream on Gen Con TV Twitch, and then put the replays on their own YouTube and other channels. So Gen Con doesn't own the show or keep the archive of the show. Whoever makes it can do that and then do other things with the show. So, so I was telling Peter about this show, and he'd heard of it but hadn't seen it. And so we're now discussing the possibility of me either moving this show to Gen Con TV or doing another version of it or something else. Just of me doing something with them. It's loose talks. There's nothing. This is not like a headline. Oh, this is going to happen. My friend Peter and I were talking about it. We just happen to be the principals involved in either side. But it's gotten me into thinking about whether or not I do that. Things I can do to improve or tweak or just try different things with this show. And now I'm telling you about it. I'm just kind of thinking out loud because, we're friends. I can do that. Just kind of think out loud, throw some ideas around. I don't know what's going to become of it. Except I do know that this was zombies having a tea party. And that was our first drawing. So having said that, it's time to close this up. Open up round 2. Turn on the encounter tables and go back to the dice one more time to get a second drawing. We go once, twice, a third time, and 2. 2 is our first who, and once, twice, a third time, 5. 5 is our second who and our second what. 2 and 5. So 2 is Sasquatch, and 5 is with a flat tire. Sasquatch with a flat tire. Okay. Which immediately brings up the thought of, I'm guessing you all are familiar with the grade school term of flat tire for when someone steps on the back of your sneaker and your foot pops out and you got to retie your shoe. But I don't think I'm going to interpret it that way. I think we're actually going to have a flat tire. So, I added this to the encounter table because this past weekend at our regular, it's our gaming group, but no, you can't see it's flat if we got it up in the air. It's our gaming group. We also watch movies and such. And we'd gotten together and watched movies or watched some Apple TV shows and came out. It's at 10 o'clock at night, and Jeff Grubb, if you all know who Jeff Grubb is, gaming legend, TSR dinosaur, Jeff Grubb, had a flat tire on his car. All right, I'm trying to work on a gag, on what the gag is going to be for this. I'm going to clear this out here again. Not loving that, and I could redraw that easily. So we potentially could have a car with a flat tire and Sasquatch just standing there looking sadly down at it. That's not very funny. I was having the idea of maybe having the car, the Sasquatch, Bigfoot, lifting the car and maybe throwing a tire on it. That's not very funny. Uh, Sasquatch lifting the car while someone else. I see my how. Maybe this will make you feel better about your drawing. This is my super quick, sketchy idea phase. Lifting a car while someone else fixes the flat. I don't know. I don't know. None of these are killing with me. I need a gag idea on this one. Sasquatch and flat tire. Maybe let's got a car and a flat tire. Let's just put that right there, sketch-wise. Maybe we could have someone working on changing the flat tire. They're on a lonely road out by the woods. And Sasquatch is coming in saying, "Need a hand?" You know, I kind of like this. So, and then so we could have Sasquatch saying, "Hey, buddy, you need a hand?" And underneath it could say something like, "Jeffrey was certain no one would believe this," or something like that, right? Uh, Something I'm thinking rather than uh, I don't know. I don't know. But I do think that for the basics, let's start with this visually. And then we'll go from there. Alright. I'm going to make a new sketch layer. Since I want to keep that and drop that way back in opacity. And we'll make a new sketch on top of that. I've drawn a bunch of Sasquatches, and I like to have them have a big head and a little not really gorilla-y face, but somewhere halfway between a gorilla and maybe a Frankenstein monster. Little eyes and nose, long upper lip to a mouth, very square jaw, wide shoulders, with wide hairy shoulders, long arms with long fingers. That's my basic Sasquatch design. Long legs, probably getting wider and hairier at the bottom. And of course, big feet. Now let's go back to that sketch layer because I'm going to need to move. I'm going to need to move this down. There we go. That's looking funnier than what I had before. Now, one of the things is I'm terrible at drawing cars. Rather than, I had him kneeling down. making it. I think I'm going to have him with the trunk up, kind of pulling out the spare tire. There we go. That crazy looking thing is going to be our car. There. All right. I think that's looking pretty good. Need a lift? That's good. That's right. It'd be funny if a different drawing. If Sasquatch is driving by like in a Range Rover. All right, good, done. Let's go to our lines layer, and we're going to start drawing this. So I like using Jeffrey as whatever the name for this guy who's having the flat tire for a couple of reasons. One, as I mentioned previously, is that Jeff Grubb, my friend, had had a flat tire this past weekend, and so it seems like a fun, just kind of thing to do to show to him, and like that. The second is there's an artist named Jeff Sturgeon, who I've now met a few times at a convention. I don't know him well enough to say he's my friend, but we're now friendly, and we're becoming friends. And he had a great Bigfoot encounter story, which I'm not going to share because that's his story to decide whether or not he wants to tell publicly or when he wants to tell the whole story publicly. It's not doesn't make a it's not a secret, which is why I feel comfortable saying that. But he has the best Bigfoot encounter story I have ever heard from someone who was actually there. And lots of people with, I heard about a guy or I saw a thing. This is a personal Bigfoot encounter story. And it's awesome. Which, like I say, that's another reason why I want to make this guy Jeff. Or Jeffrey. Probably Jeffrey. I think the caption is going to be something like, Jeffrey knew that when he got home, no one would believe this. No one would believe him. That, I think, is what it's going to be. That's too off center. It doesn't have to. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be close enough for people not to question it. Like I said, I am terrible at drawing cars. If I ever need to do it, I always have a reference that I work from, and the car looks like that. If I don't have one, I wind up with a boxy, weird thing like this. And now we need to draw Jeffrey, who I've given almost no details to. He's going to be a completely generic character. And there's the kind of thing, I guess, to come back to drawing advice. Once you've been drawing for a while, even if it's, no matter how good or bad it is, you will start to develop shortcuts and just kind of generic versions of things. Right? I can now have just the roughest of postures and positionings, and I can draw a character. I can draw a generic character like that. They may not be memorable. They may not even be particularly. Hopefully, they're entertaining. But there's nothing. What would you say about Jeffrey here? He's just a guy. I'm not sure I would be able to repeat him specifically again in a comic. It's important when you're doing comics and you have sequential art that you can get the character to look the same in subsequent panels. I'm not sure that I could make a comic about Jeffrey because I didn't take enough time. He's a totally generic character. All right, let's throw it. So it's going to, hey man, not Ned. Need a hand? I'm adjusting this. I'm trying to get this. Since I didn't plan it out, I keep putting the word balloon and the text in bad relation to each other. So I'm just moving the text around a little here. And maybe the tail will come out of there. And then down here it's going to say Jeffrey knew. Oop, W's are hard for me. There are because of my quick writing style, they tend to get very smushed. I have to be careful when I write a W. Nobody or no one? Nobody would believe him? Nobody would believe him. Careful with W again. And again, I'm not so worried about this being final version as I often say, if I was going to do this and want to sell it somewhere, I would definitely take some time to let the gag sit and percolate. You should always, you know, I'm usually working off stuff that's come out of my out of one of my notebooks, and it's very rarely is exactly what was in the notebook. The idea is there, and it percolates in my head, and I think of a way to twist it. We're working fast here, so these jokes are not going to be finished jokes. Occasionally we luck into one that feels so good, but that's not how it usually is. All right, so let's throw some color in here. I'm in there. I want to grab my gloaming brush again. This is the color I like to make Sasquatches. I'm going to continue to use my shape within the shape loose coloring style, which is you can use when you're using crayons or markers or quick coloring with a colored pencil. Don't worry about filling it out completely. Identify the shapes that make up the shape, which is also, tell you, when I talk about drawing, I talk about doing things that are based on simple shapes and basic shapes. Practicing this kind of coloring helps you to get better at understanding how to draw like that too. Once you start looking at the finished drawing and trying to identify the different shapes that are within it for the coloring purposes, you now know when I want to draw it, I need to build the character out of those kinds of shapes too. Let's see. Let's start with the tire, the faux black tire color. Slightly lighter version of that for the side of the tire. I don't know. Do you see that difference between those two colors? It's very simple. You zoom out further, it's harder to tell, but just that hint of it, like so many of the things I do here, just that hint of it gives the eye something to lean on and gives that extra sense of depth to what is otherwise a bunch of lines that are just near each other. Let's see. Kind of a denim blue for his pants. Dark brown for his leather shoes. We're in the Pacific Northwest, so he's got kind of a UW purple sweatshirt on. His car will be a blue-gray. Why? I don't know. Don't actually see a lot of cars this color, but it's a good color. That's so the car is not. It's an important part of the gag, but it's not an important part of the drawing. You just need to recognize that this is a car. In fact, you don't want to think. Given what this drawing is, I don't want the person looking at it to be thinking about what kind of car is that. I just want them to accept that it's a generic car. And when you're drawing, you should bear that in mind too, as you draw things. You may get the details right, but if that's not what you want your viewer to be looking at and worrying about, then you're wasting the effort. You're taking away from what you want them to pay attention to. That is not a well-drawn car. That's not a color of car that you see a lot out around, but it certainly is a car, and it lets you focus on the Bigfoot and the guy. Now, what else do I want to do? I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to add another layer, which is going to be behind them, because I'm going to come there, and I want to. I don't want that to be much lighter. I want to maybe do it in an inking brush rather than a gloaming brush. I want to draw some trees in the background. I could do the whole thing green. You'll see I do this, actually, maybe you haven't noticed, but when I do the drawings for the intro promo drawings and the thumbnail drawings for the videos, I will have the main characters will be inked in black ink and have strong colors, and then the entire background sometimes is all done in slight variations of a single color, so that I can put details in them, but they will drop into the background. Your eyes will be pulled to what's in the foreground. There we go. And let's put a little stand. Where are we going to put the stand on this one? Normally I make it a little bigger than this, but because all that's going on, I'm going to have a little stand. Hey man, need a hand? Jeffrey knew that when he got home, nobody would believe him. Bigfoot flat tire encounter. Be-do-be-be-do-do. That's become my closing. If I pick that as my own theme song, what am I, crazy? But there we go. Yeah, I think that of all the things I talked about while I was drawing this, the idea that I have a basic shape that I use when I want to draw Bigfoot. And it's true for all of the monsters and creatures that I draw regularly. I've got basic ideas. I think I showed this before a couple of weeks ago. Dragons, I start with triangular wedge-shaped heads and a couple of other details. And that I've drawn people enough that all I need is a rough posture, and I can put the details on that without having to go too deep. If the details aren't important, right? If we just need a generic Jeffrey character. So yeah. Hey Chris, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us. Yeah, and as you draw, the second thing will certainly become true for you too. but you should work to make the first part true. You should, as you're drawing more and more, begin to think about things that you draw often, and this will start with people. One of the reasons I can do that is I know so well what the basic shapes in my generic person are that I don't even need to draw them. I just need to know what posture they're in, and I can go straight into drawing on them. A little less so for a Bigfoot or a dragon. I need to do a little more. But the more you draw, the easier it'll be to do it. And that's the kind of thing you pull out when you're playing like Pictionary or whatever. All you need is that rough beginning, and you can do it. Now, as we saw, I'm not great at drawing cars, and I do need to put a lot of sketching in so I know what's going on there. But that's our Bigfoot and flat tire. Chris asks, were you self-taught? Where did I learn to draw so well? Well, I'm not argue about how well I draw, but I was both self-taught and then later got instruction. So I was self-taught at the beginning, as most kids do. I began by copying other people whose work I like. And then started drawing my own. And then, as I got it to be a teenager, I went back to copying people whose work I specifically liked. I was copying artists from the comic books I liked. I was copying illustrations from fine artists that I liked. Not a lot of that, but some of that. Copying a lot of comic book and a lot of comic strip copying going on there. And then I tried to draw on my own and found that I couldn't do it, so I went back to copying bits and little pieces, but I drew a lot is the main thing, and I did a lot of all of that, and I got feedback from people. And then after I'd kind of built up a basic ability level, I took a couple of low-level art courses. I took 1 or 2 drawing courses in high school, and when I was at college and I had an elective free, I took 3 or 4 studio art classes, where, of course, a lot of the time I would get feedback like, didn't anyone ever teach you that? And the answer was, no, I taught myself. And I'm like, oh, well, if you had been taught how to draw, you'd know this and learned a bunch of tricks. Chris says, Jeffrey looks very relatable to me. Well, I mean, he's supposed to be surprised. Anyway, so Chris, that's the answer to, I'm mostly self-taught, and then I've taken classes, and I've done a lot of studying on my own. And I have taken a lot of critique. I've sought out and taken. There are a lot of people who are willing to tell you things are right or wrong. It's up to you whether or not you want to listen to them. And some people you should, and some people you shouldn't. But it's up to you to figure that out, which isn't always easy. But it's really great to get into a situation. One of the things I liked most about some of the courses I took weren't the feedback. It wasn't the feedback from the instructors or the professors. It was the thing that you get is all the students would get together and look at each other's pieces and give each other, I really like this, I don't like that. Have you ever thought about this? Oh, how did you do that? And those are super instructive. Those are great. I really miss, just getting together with other artists of wide and varying degree of skills, particularly ones who are better than me. But often learn a lot from people who are just beginners, because they will look at things in a way that maybe I've looked at so often I don't even think about it. And I learned to re-see things by by taking these classes with people who are beginners. Anyway, that is their answer. So, let's clear this out of here. We're going to close down round 2. Open up round 3. Turn back on our encounter tables. One more time. Let's go back to the die roller and let's get us another set of random encounters. Or one more random encounter. Once, twice, third time. 6, which of course is adventurers. We know 6 is adventurers. And once, twice, third time. 5. Did we have 5? Was 5 the flat tire? I don't know. Let's go back and see. Why am I wondering when I can? Yeah, with a flat tire. So I don't want to do that. Here's where it's open to folks in the chat room. See, we've got a bunch of people. Michael has chatted early on. Chris just chatted before. This is your chance to throw out ideas. What would you like to see? So I've right now got adventures with a flat tire. Or if I flip those numbers, a turtle. It should say Tortle. Oh, typo on my part. Tortle, which is a turtle folk, a humanoid turtle. Apple picking, if we flip them. And I could do that, certainly. Given the choice, I will go with the Tortle apple picking. But, this being an interactive show, I want to give you all a chance to pitch me ideas, including things on the random encounter tables, or anything you want. Just throw it in there, put it in the chat, and I will pick I'll pick whatever I want. But you'll then get to see me draw it. Take a second. Tortle could headbutt the apple tree to get the apples to fall. Tortle could do that. Does anyone remember an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon called Touche Turtle? It was Touche Turtle was mostly in the 60s. So I certainly didn't watch it first time through, but I'm a huge Hanna-Barbera. I spent a lot of time watching Hanna-Barbera cartoons. And we had when I was growing up, we had a Touche Turtle golden book, or some picture book. That's what I mostly knew Touche Turtle from. It's funny, so a couple of years ago, I'm killing time, I'm vamping while people think things. I did this. Let me pull up Just Me for a sec here. Come on. There you go. I did the 4 years ago. I did the Olympic themed drawing a day, and then Kickstarter to make this book. And I got as a random drawing, and this was part of what led up to this show, was I did it in the random encounter table style. I had 20 random encounters of 20 per. And one side was D&D creatures, and the other side was Olympic events. And each day in the month of July that year, I would roll. I'd get up and I live streamed it. I did a new drawing each day, and at the end of the month, I did a Kickstarter which funded creating this art book and a coloring book with all these pieces in it. But near the end, I rolled Tortle fencing, which immediately gave me. I was so happy because of the Touche Turtle connection. And for those of you who haven't looked him up by now, Touche Turtle was a little turtle with a Three Musketeers style big hat with a plume and a foil. So that was a piece of art that I did for the fencing Tortle. And it made me very happy. The end. Touche Turtle and Dum Dum. Wally Gator, yeah, all of those. They were all. There's a Touche Turtle show, and they were all in that. Okay, let's come back here. We're going to do the Tortle apple picking. So, turn off the image. Turn back on my blue sketch inking brush. We're on the sketch layer. So, let's see. What do we want? Oh, come on. I need to turn on. There we go. So, need a tree with some apples on it. These are looking more like cherries right now, but they will be apples when I'm done. Again, just sketches. You just put the rough idea down there. And I think what I want to do is, I could have that idea of the turtle butting it. It's not that I don't like it. It's that it's not grabbing me at the moment. Now I could have the turtle reaching out to pick it up. I could have the turtle stretching his neck. I like the idea of the turtle stretching his neck to get it. That's one of those things I find amusing in videos, is seeing turtles stretch out with a big wide open mouth. So we'll do that, because we're mostly about amusing me. Not that you guys don't matter, but alright, so zoom in here a little bit. I know I'm going to want a big open mouth. You can have him smile. He's happy, this guy. Okay, I don't really need to put a lot of details here, just a little more. The only thing I don't like about this is how much of the drawing space I'm not using. But again, we're doing sketches. We're not. I'm not worrying about that at all. I could just kind of shift them over and put a little more on this side of the tree. If I was going for more of a drawing, I'd shift them over even more and have another turtle down here just sitting there chewing on an apple, which would be fine. But don't feel like we're getting towards the end of tonight, and I've already talked a lot, so I don't want to. That would add, doing a second character here would add more time than I want to have on this. So here we go. Going to put the lines. I've got my sketch ready. I like my sketch. I'm going to start with the lines I'm confident in. And are important to build the rest of the drawing around. And that is going to be this mouth. And if that is right, then the rest of this is going to come together around it. And if it's not, if I start with something else and come back to that and I get it wrong, this is central. This is key. Now, it's interesting, maybe not, interesting to me that I want to talk about it. I've had a lot of experience drawing dragons because, dragons are cool. When you're learning to draw and you're a D&D fan, you want to draw a lot of dragons. My experience drawing tortles, or turtles, comes out of my love of giant monster movies and having drawn Gamera. Wanted to draw Gamera a lot as a younger artist, and even, certainly now, still. I do love me some Gamera. Gamera is really neat. Let's see what Doug Wallace says. Turtle TV news reporter, Cat in the Hat traffic accident. Might make an interesting. Well, yeah. Now you're making a whole 3-page comic out of that. Which is, I'm not saying that is a bad thing, but I'm saying that's more than I'm doing tonight. All right, now here's where things get a little weird. I've drawn my Tortle already, and I need to get the ladder. Now, again, I don't have to get it right. I just have to have it not seem wrong. I have that foot outside the ladder. That's not right. That would be wrong. He's standing on the ladder, so the ladder has to go in front of him. Like that. There's a good example of that. If I'd gotten that wrong, it would just look wrong. And suddenly everything else I'd done would be for naught. It's looking like a peach, not an apple. It's looking like a bell pepper, not an apple. That's looking like an apple. Now we're going to add quickly some tree-like details on here. You can see everyone's got their own ways of doing trees. Mine works pretty well when we're doing something super quick like this, but I sometimes have trouble if I want to have my drawings of trees be a little more serious, a little more realistic. I have a little trouble with that. My quick way of drawing then just looks like curly squiggly blah instead of the detail that you need. right? Because trees aren't fluffy like this. What you have are a bunch of specific shaped leaves that are making up the outside of that. But the more the looser, the more cartoony it is, the less you need that. So that's why these curly hair bobs that I draw work in this level of drawing. But, as I say, if you just bump up that expected realism, what the eye expects to see, a little bit, and suddenly my curly hair bobs look very wrong, and they draw attention to themselves in the way that I keep telling you we don't want. Now here's just a difference in the weight that I'm pressing on the pen. I'm not needing to switch because I've got the Apple Pencil and it's got pressure sensitivity. I don't have to switch brushes. If I press hard, it gets thick. If I press thin, it gets thin. If I press lightly, it is thin. And so I can do both right here. Which for digital, if you're, it is maybe less important. But, that's such an important tool to learn. It's a tool in your toolbox when you're drawing, because the same is true with a ballpoint pen, which is basically just draws one. There is no more surface of it to do. But if you have good control with how hard you press, you can use a ballpoint pen to get a thin wispy line, and you can get it to do a hard, strong line. And being able to switch back and forth between the two will make your drawings better. But the reason it'll make your drawings better is that it will give you options to stress things when you want to stress them, and to de-stress them when you don't want people to pay attention. I have a line here, like on this face. If I want a line under the mouth to show that it's curving there, and that's maybe too light, but that's sure too strong. Being able to that's too detailed for the type of what's going on here. And having said that, I don't know that I want that line there, but it's a good a good point for discussion. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's take out the sketch and see what we've got. What do we need to do here? These toes are not reading the way I want them to. Stop it. Just need to adjust these things so that I know it would take too long for me to explain why I want to make those changes. Just trust me, I did. It's better with those changes. You know what would be fun? And here I'm going to change this right now. Right now I'm trying to give the idea that there are two legs, but here instead I'm going to make it so that the turtle is stretching, not just stretching this way, but also stretching this way to help to help urge that. You kind of go down to push yourself up. And it really those kind of little details, when you're doing your drawings, help. You know, it changes the posture, right? If I let me switch to a eraser here and take that leg out for a second. Right, this turtle is just kind of balancing. Look at squat. It definitely feels like he's squatting down with his butt sticking out. But if we put that leg in, that changes the feeling of the whole posture. Now he feels very elongated. Kind of things to play around with. And notice when you look at other people's work, when you see someone that does something and you think, wow, look at that what? Look at how he seems so hard, like he's stretching. What has the artist done to make that feeling? Maybe they drew that arm longer than it should be. Maybe they put the body down so that it feels like the posture is going there. These little things in the postures and the setup communicate that information, and once you start to put those things in, people will react immediately. It's such a small little difference in what you're drawing. You may think, well, all I did was stick a leg there at the bottom. I did nothing else to change that. But someone comes along and looks at it and goes, wow, how did you make that turtle feel like he's stretching? Couple little motion things there. That changes everything. It changes everything. Alright, so let's go to our colors section and switch over to the gloaming brush again. And let's finish this sucker up. Let's start with a light green with a large brush so I can do the tree. And I'm also finding shapes within the tree, again, to make it feel like it's not just a flat mass of green. And we'll come here and grab a light brown for the tree itself, for the trunk of the tree. And drop the brush size a bit. Come back. We don't want a super intense red. There we go. Apples. Apples. Now we're going to come back, and our turtles are usually green. Trying to pick a green that feels different than the tree green, but appropriate for a turtle. Not sure that's it. That's more it. Right, you're not going to confuse that with the tree green, and it does feel like something that an aquatic animal might color an aquatic animal might be. I'm going to do what I often do and make the tongue purple. Why do I do that? I don't know why. I just do. I kind of like it. I don't want it to be red because of the apples. There we go. Very pale yellow for the undershell. And this is where we'll go with that brown I was thinking about for his skin. And a darker version of it for that. There. Come back to the green because I forgot to do the tail. Okay. Alright. A kind of steel blue, light blue, for the ladder. And another green. We're going to go for a kind of a darker green for the grass. And now I'm going to do something I haven't done all day, and that's put a little shading on here to help add a little bit with the feeling that this is three-dimensional. So I'm going to take a darker version of that, and at the bottom of each of these shapes, put a little shadow. Again, one. Oop. There we go. Maybe I could have picked a slightly darker color there, but we'll go with that. Same thing on the shell, just a slightly darker version of it. Don't have to do it on every one of the scales on the shell, but a bunch of them. Looks like I am going to wind up doing most of them, but didn't really need to. And the tree trunk too. Don't forget the tree trunk. We want everything to feel just a little bit, just like it's got a little extra depth on it. Also including the apple tree itself. Here I'm just going to add some extra splotches of it. Treat it kind of like the same curlicues that I built the tree out of. I suppose don't want to forget the apples since we're doing it for everything else. There we go. And now I can come back to my line slayer and my inking brush, and I can put a little stand down here in the corner, and we have a turtle picking apples. Turtle should get that tongue looked at by a doctor. Well, yeah. You know what? That's one of the things I thinking about it. Maybe it's. Have you ever noticed giraffes have crazy purple tongues? Besides just being a weird animal, you stare at it, like, wow, what's up with a giraffe? And then it goes to eat something, and this long purple, almost like a tentacle tongue, comes snaking out of its mouth to grab the. Maybe that's why I like doing purple tongues on creatures. Who knows? Let's see what's going on here in the chat. 1 foot on the ladder makes it look more. Yes, I got that already. Great tip. Oh, you're welcome, Doug. Happy to share the tips. And again, hope to inspire more people just to draw for the fun of it. And I think that little tips about how to draw better, even when you shouldn't be worrying about that at first. I think it helps. Hopefully, it helps boost your confidence. So we got. What are my favorite subjects to draw? Well, clearly, a lot of D&D creatures. I mean, I picked things on here because I like to draw them. What are my favorite? So if you were to just look in my notebooks, you would see a lot of drawings of just eyes. I practice a lot of just drawing eyes, trying to get different shapes, different emotions into just the eyes. I don't know why, but for ever since I started drawing, I spent a lot of time drawing eyes, just doodling eyes. That's that may not be what you're asking, right? If I'm just drawing a thing, I like to draw dragons. I like to draw creatures of any kind. I like to draw things that are funny. I've always been fascinated by the art of caricature. So I also like to draw. I talk a lot about posture in these drawings and getting the right line and leaning and weight to something. So I have a lot of things where I'll just try and capture a gesture or a drawing, a movement in one line or two lines. Don't French kiss a giraffe. Good advice, really. Don't French kiss a giraffe. Yeah, Chris says, "Yo, there's a baby zoo a baby giraffe at the zoo near you." Yeah, now, be prepared. Those tongues are freaky. All right, so let me take one more sip, and then we'll do an outro and wrap this up for the week. There we have our Tortle or Turtle. I typed Turtle. Apple picking. That was our third drawing tonight. Our second drawing tonight was Bigfoot and at the tire change, or tire change Bigfoot encounter. I don't know what I'll title this, how I'll play those two together. But those were the elements: Bigfoot and changing a tire. And our very first one today was Zombie Tea Party. Look at this, and I just want to look. I look at this and I want to say brains. Kind of half want to go and put it in there, having them say it, but now brains, darling, brains. There we go. But that's what we drew today on Random Encounters. I want to thank everyone for showing up and chatting with me. Chris and Doug and Michael and who else was here earlier? Scrolling back to look. Owen was here for a little while, maybe here the whole time. Christine was here for a while. Tina was here for a while. Thank you everyone who showed up to watch and join me for this hour of improv cartooning. I will be back next week with another episode of that. You can follow me on Instagram. Instagram.com/Stannex, STANNEX. If you want to see these drawings will be posted there. So if you want to show people anything that we did tonight, you can go to the Instagram. You can go to my Facebook, which is also Stannex, STANNEX. If you like these things and you really want to follow along at home, then you may want to consider joining my Patreon, which is also Stannex. Patreon.com/Stannex, STANNEX. Come on and join. There's a lot of fun going on. I also have a show that I do on Wednesday nights called 50 Years in the Dungeon. There's a free newsletter for that at 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com. Check that out. I do interviews with folks from the tabletop gaming world, and while I'm talking to them, I draw cartoon homages to classic pieces of D&D art. So check that out. I say free newsletter, 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com. Thank you everyone for joining me. I will be back next week Hope you all have fun. And you know what? Your homework is go draw something. Just for fun. Homework. Fun homework. Go draw. Draw, my minions. Draw. Ah,